Okay, so hello, good morning, Dr. Humayra Ali. You're very
Morning.
welcome. Happy New Year. Thank you very
Happy
much
New Year.
for accepting this new discussion, new interview during this very first day of the year. Can you just a little bit introduce yourself for us and your weblog, please?
Sure. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here today. So thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate that. So I am Humayra Ali. I have a PhD in molecular biology from Princeton University. My work focused on virology. So you can imagine like why this COVID has an special effect on me. And right now, currently, I'm in the medical communications business. So I work for an agency, Havas Health and You, who partner with different pharmaceutical companies on their drugs, and we assist with their medical affairs or marketing arms in the realm of medical communications. So I combine the two passion together, virology and being in this COVID environment, as well as medical communication, I saw an immense need to communicate about the vaccines that are coming out in the market, as well as a lot of hesitancy that I'm sure you're very familiar with. So I decided to write about that in my blog, vaxtherapy.com.
Okay, it's very interesting. Yeah, and we will try to give the address to those who are watching this interview later
Thank
to
you.
see all of the publications. Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
So, what do you think about the upcoming vaccines to the market? How many vaccine do you think that we will have? Let's say from now to June.
Sure. I can, well, we already have three vaccines, three major vaccines, I would say. The Pfizer vaccine, the Moderna vaccine, I should say Pfizer BioNTech, because they're, two equally huge partner. Moderna vaccine, as well as the AstraZeneca and Oxford vaccine that's gotten like emergency use approval. And they're already into people's arm right now, the Pfizer and the Moderna one. AstraZeneca hopefully by next week. So it's very exciting, and kudos to the scientists, kudos to everybody in the pharma industry, academic and government, who has partnered to make this enormous effort a reality. So kudos to them. There is also the Russian vaccine as well as the Chinese vaccines that are approved. We need to see a little bit more data, but they're vouching that they are very effective. So I'm very interested in looking at the data. So other than those, we also have other companies who are heavily funded by the government, as well as the Gates Foundation through the COVAX initiative, as well as WHO. Those would, so together, like, I'm looking at, Janssen from Johnson & Johnson vaccine. So very excited about that one. We have another small company, Novavax, they're coming out with their vaccine. They're in phase 3 right now. We have Sanofi and GSK partnership. They're trying to get one out. And then we also have Merck, I believe. So these are like, really advanced in the pipeline right now. So we have big hopes for those. But other than that, I believe right now there are 80 plus companies. They're either in phase 1, 2, 3 stages. And besides those, there's a ton, just equally as much, about 200 some companies total, if you count. They're in animal studies, anywhere from animal studies to all the way to approval. So there's a lot going on in this space.
Yeah, thank you very much for this answer. Yeah, so many people, even professionals, are asking, so why do we need two different, very different vaccines? We could have only BioNTech or a second one or a third one. Why do we need all of these different types of the vaccines? I give you an example. Let's say if we have a disease, and most of the time, all around the world, there is only one or two or three treatments to cure that disease. For a virus, for COVID virus, it seems that we were going to have more than 10 or 15 different types of vaccine that they have used different technologies. Why do you think that we need all of these different technologies and different types of vaccines? Why we cannot only use one or two or three types of vaccines?
So Ferry, that's a really good question. So my thinking is because of the immense funding that has government as well as the different foundations has put in, a lot of the companies, like going into it, we didn't know what was going to be successful. Of course, we went after new technologies, not because, we wanted to try something new, but because those technologies technologies had promises from previous studies with other diseases or other vaccines, or even like, cancer therapeutics. So take mRNA, for instance, right? So it's very easy to grow. You can rapidly produce it as opposed to the traditional models for vaccine development. It's been there's been some research, and a lot of people think that mRNA technology is new. As a matter of fact, I'm going to argue that we've been working with this mRNA technology since the last couple of decades, right? Even Moderna has like data in influenza with their mRNA technology. Others have done vaccine works in HIV, rabies virus. We also have cancer vaccines that has shown like, early promise. So we've been working with those since like, the 2000s. And we have all this assurance from not just from the bench research, preclinical data, as well as clinical safety data. We have all those assurance. So that is the reason why these technologies jumped at this opportunity when you had like all this, government backing, fundings, backing from different, like the Gates Foundations. They took this opportunity because this is their opportunity to take, because usually funding, raising money takes time, especially for the mid-size and the smaller companies. But when there's we're in the pandemic situation, everything is heightened, right? It's an urgency. We need to come up with a solution. So this company saw this as an opportunity, and knowing the science and the research, they hedged their bets on these technologies. Now, going back to your question, like why do we need so many different technologies? It's the same thing. So Pfizer, Moderna, BioNTech, they saw that, okay, they're already working with that technology. They, instead of starting from scratch, they can take the advanced product and apply it for this disease. Similar thing from Novavax for AstraZeneca, Oxford, like they had this adenovirus for Oxford, AstraZeneca had this adenovirus-based vector that they have used as a vehicle for other vaccines, right? Novavax has their technology for other infectious diseases as well. So it's the same story. So that's where I believe, came the introduction of different types of vaccines. But why do we need it? Because, I think when the government funded, they couldn't just bet on one or two, right? They just had to fund.
They were not sure. It's because they were not sure about the reason.
Right, they're not sure. And why would they continue to do it? Because there's an incentive in it, because it's not just coronavirus. It could be some other virus, another pandemic, right? So the more you develop, science should be well funded. This is the reason. This pandemic is the testament that, why that should be the case. My thinking is, perhaps even if the other companies, maybe they're in phase 1 or early stage, they're advancing their technology so they can use this science, this knowledge for maybe another disease area, maybe even cancer. So, I mean, it's not like, you have one successful vaccines and others are not going, they don't have any opportunity. That's not the case here. So.
So if you want to say that we have had good results nowadays with a little bit distance from 2020, from whatever has happened, for vaccine discovery or a treatment. So if I ask you, what are the main drawbacks of the scientific discovery for a new vaccine for a virus or a
Mhm.
new disease or a new treatment, which one will you choose? The regulation, the regulatory affairs, or the investment, the amount of the investment, or if there is any other drawback that you can name for us?
So drawback in terms of
Discovery and
recovery,
innovation.
like in and other than the pandemic, you mean before
Yes, yes.
pre-pandemic? Okay, so I think drawback definitely would be the money, right? Money is a big drawback. The other, I wouldn't say necessarily drawback. It's like, traditionally, we have done thing in sequential fashion, right? So we do, we spend about like anywhere from 3 to 4 years doing, laboratory research and animal research, preclinical. We take a look at it and see, if there are potential candidates that can be advanced into the next phase, which is phase 2, safety study in humans. And then we take a look at that. We take a lot of time to digest the data, evaluate, and then, apply, there's the regulatory phase involved. And then we do phase 2, so on and so forth. And even when, we are in phase 3, we're just beginning to, think about like manufacturing, distribution. The large company, they have the financial backing to be able to think about those well in advance. But for a small company, maybe not so much. This is where they're looking for partnerships. But, the money has to be there, right? But if you can't prove that your phase 3 is successful, for the small, mid-sized company, it's very hard to advance to that stage. And then comes the regulatory approval phase. So this is a different situation. You had emergency use approval. So it was like all hands on deck. Everybody was in it with one goal. So we made it happen, right? So the priority was given, even from the regulatory side. I would speak about FDA, of course, the US regulator, FDA. But typically, they have so many drugs that they review. So usually they take about a year to review this and get this thing approved. And that's the time overlaps with like, manufacturing, a large scale mass production, distribution, partnerships, and so on and so forth. So that whole process, step-by-step sequential endeavor takes about anywhere from like, around like 10 to 12 years. Now, we have done the mumps vaccine in record time, other than this pandemic, the COVID-19 vaccines in 4 years. So it can be done. So a lot of the drawbacks, or quote unquote drawback, would be that, we take time because of money, because of urgency. Maybe the urgency isn't there, because of, manpower, because in this situation, people were working day and night to make this a possibility, right? So usually, we don't have that. Also, yeah, I mean, you brought up regulatory, like, the urgency there is obviously not there. So it takes time. It really does. It's a lot of money involved. Like our US government spent about 9 billion across 7 companies, right? That's other than, what COVAX and, CEPI and WHO are putting in. And that doesn't even get into all the private funding, like private investors, so all the small companies that 200 somebody is funding them. So that's not even in the radar.
Mm-hmm. Okay, somebody is funding them. Okay, can this somebody become a group of people, ordinary people, who just with being informed and educated how to invest their money,
Mhm.
and they instead of, let's say, buying a building, buying a second home, they want to spend money into scientific medical investments. So is it possible, and do you think that new models can emerge from what has happened last year? Can we educate other people to attract more investment and accelerate finding new treatments for a lot of diseases that have been forgotten, for cancer as an example? for many Alzheimer or many
Mhm.
other diseases that are life-threatening, and so many others. So what do you think about it? Do you think that there are new models shaping among the companies, or how can we educate ordinary people to attract the investment into
You know,
life-saving? Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, no, that's a really good thinking. You're thinking in the, right domain. Obviously, we need funding. We can see like what funding can do. So coming from a small company background, I did work for a company called Cytosorbents Corporation, and they do have a device. It's a blood purification device to address inflammatory mediators, because one component of the virus is massive inflammation. So in order to tame the inflammation, because oftentimes, when you end up in the ICU, the inflammation is the one that's probably damaging your organs, multiple organs, and eventually death. So that device has gotten emergency use approval for use in COVID patient, critically ill COVID patients. So when I was at that company from 2009 to 2015, one of the very first few employees there, it was small, like it was a penny stock company at that time. That company has made tremendous progress over time, even after I have left, to the point when they have gotten approval in the emergency use approval in US. So right now they're listed in NASDAQ and all that. So all that, baby step that they took, every step of the way, we had to go get investors money, and we had to pitch to different investors. Look, this product has this value proposition. What does that mean? What is the market size? What is the potential? Basically ultimately showing them with theoretical numbers that in goes this much of your money and out comes some sort of a multiple, right? That's pretty much the name of the game. So yes, it's hard to go get investors, especially if you're very early stage, and value proposition, you always have it from the get-go, but that value proposition keeps getting refined and substantiated with data, data down, phase one, phase two, phase three, right? As you're closer to marketing, it
That's just a second. Yes, Amir, that's my question. I know from the previous interviews and from all of the publications that
Mhm,
attracting professional investors and convincing them, about your value propositions and, about your market share, about your future sales, it's very difficult. It can be very difficult. Yeah.
mhm,
But I am talking about attracting a new type of the investors, among ordinary people, people, yes, they just want to buy, a second house, a third house, instead of that, whatever they have lived during the COVID, maybe their mentality has changed because, there are a lot of publications about the new buying behavior among people.
mhm,
They have definitely changed their behavior, at least in Europe, it's proven that they are not buying the same thing that they used to buy last year,
mhm,
and they are investing in a new things, it's
mhm.
completely a new phenomena for the marketers and for those who are specialists in buying behavior, consumer behavior. So I think that this can be used, this can be used if it's
Absolutely. But I
smartly
would
used.
say we would also need to educate those people. So if you're
Yeah.
targeting the ordinary people, a lot of them don't understand. Like before I started working for the small company, I had no idea. I learned so much, right? How does the investment work? I personally invested in that company, and like I know how it works, right? Even if like there are opportunities to make money, even if the product may not end up in the market. So there are ways like, because it's a step-by-step investment, right? When you invest early on, you can buy a lot of, internal stock for a very little amount of money. Over time, as the company shows more and more promise, the valuation go up, right? So you can, people have a lot of time, they have cashed in and made money and went up, right? And found some other things to invest for. So if we want to target, and that's a really good strategy, I feel like there's a lot of education that needs to be done. And in this age of in this digital age, how else you can reach, how better to reach more people than through webinars and, maybe, some virtual, platform that you can use to do that. Definitely. But I would also say, reach out to ordinary people, but also like small companies. Like, I know that I used to write a lot of grants and brought in multi-million dollars worth of funding from DoD, from NIH, and these are non-dilutive form of funding. So investors are important, yeah, but then you're giving them your share. So you're diluting out your company's value, right? What happens with the government funding is you don't have to pay a penny back.
Mm-hmm.
The milestones, you show the milestones, you collect your money, and you advance your company, you pay your overhead, salary for your scientist or whoever's involved with doing the work. You can charge overhead for that. You can charge for research reagents and all that.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to pay them back. So those are very, very lucrative for smaller companies.
Mm. Yeah, it's very important. And beside the ordinary people, attracting the investment from the ordinary people that they require, the platforms, education, I think this can be done, this can be easily done. Convincing ordinary people, it's a lot easier than convincing the ordinary, investors.
Yeah.
But also, because there is a shift, I think in industrial activities, several industry, let's say luxury industry, have to think about new investments, and diversify their investments, because people they probably they do not want to buy luxury goods anymore. But if they learn that the same industry or the same luxury company is now investing in healthcare and in for finding new treatments, it can definitely attract more stakeholders to this company. So I think that this diversification should definitely happen in the upcoming months during, let's say, luxury industry and airlines, that they are having a lot of difficulties, and food and beverages industry, tourism, that they're losing a
Sure.
lot of money right now. Instead of that, all of them, they can diversify their businesses. And because I think this is a huge value proposition. What's more important in our life than our health? And
Absolutely. Yeah.
so probably, as you mentioned, it's do you think that it's only education, educating those industries and people to invest in the right way? Or
I think education, I'm a big believer in educating public. I think if you can educate and show the numbers, they would buy into it. And, I mean, you have now a model to prove, right, how it works.
so this can be definitely a model, a new model. And
Absolutely. Yeah.
yes, and we can say that probably in the upcoming months, there will be other emerging models in different businesses, that all of them may converge into solving the healthcare problems all around the world. They would likely be interested in investing in those ways, new ways, finding new ways, probably.
Sure.
So, and what about value proposition? Do you think that even for value proposition, there might be new arguments? What can be, shown as a value, for a new treatment or a vaccine or a technology, that's required to be available for a company? What can be a new value proposition in your view?
I, the need would be like, what this pandemic has taught us is like, the basics things we care about, right? Our lifestyle has changed, of course, life-threatening technologies always take the priority, and they have a lot to gain from. So it's always going to be there. Anything that can save lives is going to have the highest value proposition, and it depends on the market size. But other than that, like now having gone through this pandemic, I think people would be willing to invest in things like, public health measures, right? So that we don't, so that we can prevent situations where we are compromising our quality of life to the point that we can no longer socially mingle, right? Other than this virtual setting. We can't see our loved ones. We can, like even our grandparents, like, those who are in the nursing home have been hit hard, during this pandemic. So, and then not to mention the businesses, like the restaurant businesses, just a wide number of, businesses out there suffered. So I think people would see the value in investing in, in public health measures, preventing something like this, infectious diseases. Certainly cancer is always going to be there, because it's just cancer is cancer, right? It's a different beast. Um, Things like, chronic diseases and stuff like that, I don't know how that would pan out after the pandemic, but they have importance. But anything that can impact your lifestyle, um, or like mortality, will take the precedence.
Mhm. Do you think that the lifestyles may change definitely after COVID? After, if there is an after COVID, we do not know yet.
Yeah, I mean, I do believe that COVID's gonna be with us for a little bit. I don't think it can be eradicated. It's not that simple. But yeah, so we just have to integrate it into a part of our lifestyle from now on. And we may have to just rely on vaccines. Maybe it's annual vaccines, maybe it's every few years or something like that. Um, so yeah, the lifestyle, I hope the lifestyle changes for to make a positive impact. I hope we take sanitation seriously, like simple, like I always tell my family, like after COVID, let's just always make sure we come home, wash our hands. We can prevent so many diseases, like even like the simple flus, and
Mhm.
so many things that way, just washing hands, because this is where we're introducing right this nasal passage, right?
Mhm.
So let's take that with us, this hand sanitization, or just taking, like maybe like just being aware about it. I think that's one aspect. The other one, yeah, I think people will appreciate each other more, because having gone through, because sometimes at least in the US, I know, like we tend to be very reserved. We everything's about business. I mean, I don't want to say everything, but it's mostly business transaction. But I think people are going to appreciate it once we get back into the socialization part. Like we're gonna appreciate, we're gonna hug each other so much, and that the humanity will be, the human touch and all that would be appreciated more. um, Business world is going to change, the travel industry is going to change, right? Obviously the work environment is going to change. If anything, we have proven that people can work fine remotely. So anything, they work more because they're at home, they're
Yes,
not wasting time commuting and all that, so it can be done.
sure.
So that was an important lesson. So those are just a few examples, but I'm sure there are more. Yeah.
So if we want to ask you one last question, it's about the innovation in the new year. What do you forecast about the type of the innovations that may happen, within the small, medium-sized companies? How do you forecast this? Do you think that this COVID experience has encouraged the smaller companies to innovate more? Or do you think that we will witness the arrival of the new innovations to the market very soon? I'm talking about healthcare and in pharmaceutical
Okay.
industries.
All right. I definitely think it'll encourage them, because they have seen like what massive funding can do. So they would be, I hope they would be hungry for more. And I hope they have learned like how to become more efficient, because you're not just taking money and developing something step by step in a slower traditional pathway, but you have also learned how to be efficient and really take part in this race, right? To race to this vaccine development initiative. So I think there's a lot that the companies have learned, at least the 200 companies that are in this space, right? And that doesn't, I mean, I'm not even talking about the tech companies. I know we're talking about healthcare industry, but imagine the AI technology, the even this Zoom platform that we're using. Imagine all those companies. There's so many littler companies coming up with their own platform to, provide services during this time. So I think this has taught everybody to be smart, more efficient, and I think hopefully it's going to spur the economy and innovation down the
Mm,
line.
mm. So that's a very good news. Thank you very much, Dr. Humayra, for this nice interview. And I hope that this may inspire a lot of people. So I cut them. Let's see. I have to cut it here. Up, up, up. I think.